There's something timeless about Hayao Miyazaki's animated movies. It's amazing how easy it is to revisit Ghibli films released in the 80s and 90s. 2D animation ages really well. Both Ghibli films and the Disney Renaissance demonstrate that, whereas Pixar films released in the early 2000s are noticeably more aged. Look at the difference between the original Toy Story and any of its more recent sequels. Older animated films can be remastered to higher resolutions. Princess Mononoke's recent IMAX run demonstrates that beautifully. But I think the biggest reason Ghibli films still feel so relevant is how expressive its animation is. The medium lends itself to style. The nature of drawing a story inherently forces artistic expression, and some people lean into that more than others. Animation is not just painting or drawing, it's specifically movement, and great animation is often paired with grounded exaggeration. Motion that properly captures and expresses complex feelings, all while never breaking immersion. Welcome back to the second part of exploring Mononoke. My name is Pei, and today we're talking about how Miyazaki fully utilizes animation's expression through Princess Mononoke. Last month, there was this annoying trend where people were running pictures through AI art filters trying to emulate Hayao Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli's animation style. Discussing AI art is its own can of worms, but it did get me thinking about how Miyazaki's animation feels so full of life, so expressive. So let's explore why. There's this popular tool sometimes used in animation called rotoscoping, where live action footage is animated over frame by frame. This method results in a very realistic approach to animation. It's also common for animators, even when not rotoscoping, to use live action references. There's this kind of cool idea that I want to attribute to Miyazaki, but I can't find the specific quote, that a lot of animation is specifically about watching carefully. In the NHK documentary 10 Years with Hayao Miyazaki, the first episode starts with him getting an old camcorder back in 2006 and driving around recording footage to look at later. While I'll be talking about in detail Miyazaki's use of exaggeration, I think I should highlight first that it's built off of a foundation of realism. An interesting example of this is this common tactic that Miyazaki uses, where when someone's feeling strong emotions, the wind will literally bend around them, causing their hair and clothes to ruffle. I think part of the reason this tool is so effective is because of how realistic the wind feels. The way the hair and clothes are tossed about is a byproduct of someone putting a lot of care into the animation, the result of deliberate, close paid attention. So it's kind of this delicate balancing act between realism and exaggeration. And that exaggeration isn't just limited to animation. In part 1 of Exploring Mononoke, I talked about sound design, the score, use of silence, and sound effects. And some of my favorite examples of great sound effects are also paired with exaggerated animation. Some of them are more extreme and some of them are subtle, like in the film's opening sequence where the protagonist Ashitaka climbs a wooden tower and the wood bends under his weight. Small but still exaggerated. Whenever Ashitaka knocks an arrow and fires it screaming through the air, you can see after he releases the tension, the force causes the bow to rotate around his hand. You could also argue that in some ways this is attention to detail, trying to find all the little things that are sometimes ignored in animation and highlighting them through exaggeration. When Gonza swings his big sword at San, he cuts the wood behind him. When rifles decimate a rooftop, Ashitaka protects himself, putting his arms in front of his face before one of the pieces of wood pierces that arm. The injury doesn't come back later, but it absolutely sets up the potential consequences the scene is demonstrating. While you can praise animation in a vacuum, Miyazaki's doesn't exist in one. It almost always informs the feeling of a scene, and the impressive moments are just as brief as they need to be. There's this common pitfall I see creators fall prey to a lot, whether or not it's directing, writing, or making YouTube videos. When you put a lot of work into something and it comes together beautifully, you almost want to linger on it and highlight just how amazing it is. But it's more effective when it doesn't linger. Let it be exactly as long as it needs to be. See, Miyazaki does a really good job in that micro, while also keeping in mind the much bigger picture. In theory, animation is a medium for unbridled creativity. If you can imagine it and draw it, it can exist. But in practice, animation is incredibly limited. Even in its most basic form, it's time-consuming, challenging, and exhausting. Anime productions already run on incredibly tight budgets, and the work animators do should result in better compensation. A Vox article talking about this specific topic from 2019 points at data from the Japanese Animation Creators Association. In their 20s, animators average a salary of about $10,000 a year. In their 30s, it bumps up to about $19,000, and then in their 40s and 50s, $31,000. It's not a lot of money, and it's incredibly hard work. And even despite that, a lot of anime series are running on razor-thin margins. Part of the reason the industry exists is because of the love and passion that animators have for what they do. Anime sometimes tells stories that it feels like no one else could. But practically, it's so hard to make a good animated story. It's part of the reason why anime cuts so many corners. So when someone's able to come along, capturing with attention to detail a beautiful balance between realism and exaggeration, it's fantastic. I've spent a lot of this video talking about fine details and animation choices that were nuanced and small. But what about the grandiose? This is a fantastic world filled to the brim with life. Studio Ghibli is famous for the way it paints nature. Many of Miyazaki's films are built around humans' relationship with the natural world. So when he chooses to draw tons of little spirits sitting in trees waiting for a grand deer god to transform at sunrise, the scene ends up with hundreds of them rattling their heads. The way water and other liquids are used in this movie is fantastic too. But it doesn't end there. Take any shot where Ashitaka is traveling through a bustling town or city and pay attention to all the periphery information, and you'll find it's all worth looking at. In this little moment where they're closing the gate, they could have looped this animation. But instead, the second way around, they have this character use his body weight as leverage. These scenes are so demanding to animate. There's this almost infamous scene from The Wind Rises where characters are cutting through a bustling crowd, which took an animator 15 months before Miyazaki was finally satisfied with it. Imagine working on 4 seconds for almost a year and a half. Earlier I talked about how Miyazaki's outstanding animation doesn't exist in a vacuum. A good example of the inverse is an old movie called Garden of Words that really doesn't hold up. Outside of its animation, I think a lot of the story misses, but it is gorgeous. It's a movie that's largely built around its rainy day aesthetic, so the beauty goes a long way. But to me, it felt like a poor exploration of angst. Whereas Miyazaki's Ghibli films are also beautiful for the sake of aesthetic and emotion. But for Miyazaki, the beauty never feels like the priority. It's always working to complement something bigger, the emotions of the scene. Suspense, dread, tension, joy, relief, fear, the emotions in each scene feel so apparent. Art is built off of the foundation of evoking an emotional response, even if it's just for entertainment. But sometimes those emotions are big and they're captured so eloquently. The byproduct of beautiful animation, thousands of hours of work dedicated not only to individual products, but also the craft. Part of the reason Mononoke feels so special to me is not just that it's beautiful, but that the beauty works perfectly in conjunction with the theme of the story, showcasing complex emotional undertones through expressive animation. I mean, the epitome of show don't tell. Miyazaki isn't the only animator who's capable of doing this really well, but there is something so distinct about the way he does it. It has more than just survived the trial of time, it's aged fantastically. Across his 46 years as an anime director, I don't think anyone's been able to emulate his style and maintain it. I think Mononoke is such a strong example of that.